Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. When people talk about marriage, they often describe it as a partnership, a bond that can withstand storms, a place where two people support each other through the highs and lows of life. For 10 years, I thought that's what my wife and I had. Her name was Emily, and I truly believed she was my forever. We had our routines, our little inside jokes, and a life that, while not glamorous, was steady, comfortable, and safe. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe the very things I valued, stability, loyalty, reliability, were the things she found boring and predictable. It all started one evening when I came home from work. I remember it so clearly because it was the night everything shifted. She was sitting on the couch, dressed up nicer than usual for a weekday, her hair perfectly done. She looked like she was ready to go out somewhere, but there was a look in her eyes that made my stomach knot even before she opened her mouth. "We need to talk," she said, those 4 words that make every spouse's heart drop. I sat down across from her, trying to stay calm. "Okay. About what?" Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a sigh. "About us. About me." She took a deep breath and then let it out in a rush, like she had rehearsed it 100 times. "I can't do this anymore. You're boring, Daniel. Predictable. Everything about our life is the same. Day in and day out, I feel like I'm suffocating." I stared at her, stunned. "Boring? Emily? We've built a life together. We have a home, routines, plans. That's not boring. That's stability." But she shook her head, her eyes glittering with something sharp. "No, it's suffocating, and I need more. I've already found more." It felt like a punch in the chest. I blinked at her, trying to process. "What do you mean?" She didn't even flinch. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I've been seeing someone, my boss, and before you react, just understand that he makes me feel alive in ways you don't. He's exciting, ambitious, powerful. He makes me feel like I'm wanted, like I'm desirable." My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her words. My wife, the woman I had built my life with. She was telling me so casually that she was cheating on me, and not just with anyone, but with her married boss. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. "So, what exactly are you saying, Emily?" Her chin lifted. "I'm saying I'm leaving. I deserve better. And I've finally realized I don't have to settle for you anymore. He's divorcing his wife, and when the time is right, we'll be together. This is an upgrade for me, Daniel. You'll see. I'm not going to waste my best years with someone who doesn't excite me." An upgrade. She called leaving me, her husband of 10 years, an upgrade. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw something against the wall. But instead, I just sat there in silence, studying her face, the way she was so sure of herself. She really thought she was moving on to something better, like I was some old appliance she was trading in for the latest model. Finally, I stood up. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "If that's how you feel, Emily, then I won't stop you. Go. Chase your excitement. I hope it works out the way you think it will." She blinked, clearly thrown off by my lack of anger. Maybe she expected me to beg or fight for her. But I didn't. I wouldn't. She packed her things over the next 2 days. I didn't help her, but I didn't stop her either. She was smiling as she left, walking out the front door with her suitcase, like she had won some kind of prize. I watched from the window as she got into her boss's car. He didn't even bother to hide it. He pulled up right in front of the house, grinning like he had conquered something. Emily kissed him before the car door closed, and then they drove away. And just like that, I was alone. The first few weeks were hard, I won't lie. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching out to the empty side of the bed. I'd hear echoes of her laughter in the house. I'd find little reminders, her favorite mug, her perfume lingering in the closet. But instead of falling apart, I made a decision. If she thought I was boring and predictable, then fine. Let her think that. But I knew something she didn't. I was strong, stronger than she realized. So while she was out living her fantasy with her married boss, I started quietly rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years. I took up hobbies I'd always put off, woodworking, hiking, even painting. I focused on my career, working late hours, and eventually landed a promotion that doubled my salary. I worked out, shed the extra pounds, and felt better than I had in years. And the more I rebuilt, the more I realized something important. Emily had done me a favor. Because with her gone, I wasn't stuck in a loveless marriage anymore. I wasn't weighed down by her criticisms or her constant need for drama. I was free. Of course, the freedom didn't erase the pain overnight. There were nights when I still felt the sting of betrayal, when I replayed her words in my head. Boring, predictable, upgrade. But instead of letting them crush me, I used them as fuel. Every time I pushed myself to try something new, every time I hit a milestone, every time I looked in the mirror and saw a stronger version of myself, I thought, this is who she left behind, and she'll regret it. And as fate would have it, regret came sooner than I expected. About 8 months after she left, I got a message from her. Out of the blue. Just one line. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my heart racing. I hadn't heard from her in months. Why now? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I did what I always do. I stayed calm. I closed my phone, sat back, and thought about all the ways this conversation could go. The next evening, she showed up at my door, and the look on her face, I'll never forget it. When I opened the door and saw Emily standing there, it felt like a ghost from my past had suddenly materialized. She looked nothing like the confident, smug woman who had walked out of my house 8 months ago. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying for days. Daniel, she whispered, her voice trembling. I leaned against the doorframe, deliberately calm. Emily. For a moment she just stood there, as if she didn't know what to say. Finally, she blurted out, Can we talk, please? I should have slammed the door right then. But a part of me, the part that still wanted answers, stepped aside. I let her in. She walked into the living room like she had so many times before, but it wasn't her house anymore. I had redecorated, changed the furniture, rearranged everything. It no longer looked like the life we had shared. She noticed, her eyes scanning the room with a mixture of surprise and pain. You've changed things, she said quietly. Yes, I replied simply. A lot has changed. She sat down on the couch, clasping her hands nervously. I stayed standing, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, she broke the silence. It didn't work out. I raised an eyebrow. With your boss? She nodded, her face crumpling. He promised me so much, Daniel. He said he'd leave his wife, that we'd build a life together. But after I left you, everything started falling apart. He became distant, controlling. And when his wife found out, he begged her for forgiveness and threw me aside like I was nothing. I almost laughed at the irony, but instead, I just stared at her, my voice cold. So now that your fantasy didn't work out, you came crawling back to me? Tears welled in her eyes. No. Yes, I don't know. I made a mistake, Daniel. The biggest mistake of my life. You were good to me, steady, loyal. I thought I wanted excitement, but all I found was chaos. I thought I was upgrading, but I was wrong. Please, can we try again? I'll do anything to make it right. Her words might have moved me once, but not anymore. I wasn't the same man she left behind. I shook my head slowly. Emily, when you walked out that door, you didn't just leave me. You burned every bridge between us. You didn't stumble into a mistake. You made a choice. A deliberate choice to betray me, to humiliate me, to treat me like I wasn't enough. She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. I know, she whispered. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I still love you, Daniel, and I know you still love me too. Please don't throw away 10 years of marriage. That made me laugh, a bitter, hollow laugh. Emily, you threw away 10 years when you walked out. You said I was boring, predictable. You said I wasn't worth your best years. Do you think I've forgotten that? She covered her face, sobbing. I was stupid. Please, just give me one more chance. I let her cry. I didn't comfort her. I just watched, feeling a strange sense of justice. After a while, I spoke. Let me ask you something. When you were with him, when you were sneaking around behind my back, did you ever once think about what it would do to me? Did you ever stop to consider the damage you were causing? Or was it all just about you? She didn't answer. She couldn't. And in her silence, I found my answer too. I stepped toward the door and opened it wide. "Emily, you need to leave." Her head snapped up, panic flooding her face. "What? No, please, Daniel." I said, "Leave. This is no longer your home, and I am no longer your husband. You made your choice. Now live with it." She shook her head frantically, as if she couldn't process what was happening. "You can't just erase me, Daniel. You can't just pretend I never existed." But the truth was, I already had. "Goodbye, Emily," I said firmly. Slowly, like her legs weighed 1,000 pounds, she stood up and walked to the door. She paused, looking at me one last time, tears streaming down her face. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "Someday, you'll regret letting me go." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, Emily. The only regret I have is ever letting you into my life in the first place." And with that, I closed the door in her face. For the first time in months, I felt a peace settle over me. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was the end of her chapter in my life. What I didn't realize, though, was that her attempt to crawl back would spark something bigger. Because when word got out, when mutual friends and even her family learned what she had done and how I had shut the door on her, suddenly the narrative shifted. People who once pitied me now respected me. And people who once admired her, they saw her for who she really was. But Emily wasn't done. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, she kept trying. Texts, calls, showing up at my workplace, apologizing, begging, even threatening. She tried to make me feel guilty, tried to guilt-trip me into remembering our vows. But every time I stood firm, and each time I said no, her desperation grew. Until finally, one day, she crossed a line that changed everything. The next few weeks were like living in the shadow of a storm. Emily didn't just disappear after I shut the door on her. No, she lingered like a ghost that refused to let go. At first, it was just messages. A late-night text saying, "Please, Daniel, just talk to me." Or a voicemail where she was sobbing, begging me to forgive her. I ignored them all. But then came the calls. Dozens of them in a single day. My phone would light up every hour with her name flashing across the screen. Sometimes she would leave voicemails, other times just hang up. It was relentless. When I didn't respond, she escalated. One morning, I walked into my office building, and there she was, sitting in the lobby, waiting. She jumped up the moment she saw me. "Daniel, please, just 5 minutes." I didn't break stride. "Emily, this is harassment. Leave me alone." The receptionist was staring. People around. Us were staring, but Emily didn't care. She followed me right up to the elevators. "I'll change, Daniel. I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me another chance." I turned to her, my voice ice cold. "Emily, listen carefully. Whatever we had is dead. You need to accept that. If you don't stop this, I will call the police." Her face went pale, but I saw the flicker of something dangerous in her eyes. Not just sadness, obsession. She didn't stop. She started showing up outside my apartment, sitting in her car for hours. Once, when I came home late, she was standing in the hallway, clutching a photo of us on our wedding day. She shoved it at me, her hands trembling. "Do you remember this, Daniel? Do you remember how happy we were? You can't just throw it all away." I took the photo from her, tore it in half, and dropped it in the trash. "That happiness died the moment you betrayed me." Her face twisted, anger and pain mixing together. "You think you're better than me now, don't you? You think you can just erase me like I never mattered?" I didn't answer. I just walked away and locked the door behind me. But that night, lying in bed, I realized something. Emily wasn't just desperate, she was unraveling. And people who are unraveling can be dangerous. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of her texts, logs of her calls, notes about every time she showed up uninvited. A small part of me hoped it wouldn't come to anything, but another part of me knew better. Then came the turning point. It was a Friday evening. I had just finished dinner when there was a knock at the door. For a moment, I thought it might be a neighbor, but when I opened it, there she was again. This time, though, she didn't look broken. She looked furious. "You ruined my life, Daniel," she spat. "Do you even realize what you've done? I gave up everything for him, and when it fell apart, I thought at least you'd be there. But no, you turned your back on me too. You're supposed to be my husband." I stayed calm. You stopped being my wife the day you chose him over me. Her eyes narrowed. If I can't have you, then no one will. A chill ran through me. I'd expected tears, maybe shouting, but not this level of venom. I stepped back slowly, keeping my voice steady. Emily, leave now, or I'll call the police. She stared at me for a long moment, her chest heaving, and then finally stormed off down the hall. That night, I barely slept. My phone buzzed nonstop with her messages, ranging from apologies to threats. I love you, I can't live without you. Then minutes later, you'll regret this, Daniel. You'll regret everything. By Saturday morning, I knew I couldn't let this continue. I filed for a restraining order. It wasn't easy, reliving everything in front of a judge, laying out all the texts, the voicemails, the confrontations. But when the restraining order was granted, I felt a weight lift off my chest. Finally, there was a barrier between me and her chaos. But Emily didn't take it well. When she was served the papers, she showed up at my mother's house, screaming on the lawn, accusing me of turning everyone against her. My mom called the police, and they escorted her away. That should have been the end of it, but with Emily nothing was ever that simple. A week later, a mutual friend called me. Daniel, you need to know. Emily's been telling everyone that you abused her. She's saying that's why she left, that she was scared of you. I felt my blood boil. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was slander. She was trying to destroy my reputation. I stayed calm, though, because by then, I had something she didn't. Proof. I had kept every message where she admitted her affair, every voicemail where she begged to come back, every threat where she lashed out. All of it painted a very different story. So instead of getting angry, I started sharing my side, quietly, carefully, with the people who mattered, friends, family, colleagues. The more the truth spread, the more Emily's lies crumbled. Her boss, the man she'd thrown her life away for, had already dropped her. Her family, embarrassed by her behavior, started distancing themselves. Her friends stopped answering her calls. Piece by piece, her support system vanished. And me? I stood taller than ever. One evening, weeks after the restraining order, I came home to find a small package at my door. Inside was our old wedding ring set, hers and mine, wrapped in tissue paper. No note, no explanation, just silence. That was the last I heard from her. But I knew deep down it wasn't over yet. Not completely, because Emily was the kind of person who couldn't accept losing. And as much as she had already lost, there was still one thing left she hadn't touched yet, the new life I was building without her. And when she finally tried to interfere with that, well, that was when I delivered the revenge she never saw coming. The package with the rings sat on my counter for days. I didn't touch it, didn't throw it away, didn't keep it as a memento. Just let it sit there, like a reminder of everything I had survived. I thought maybe, finally, Emily had given up. Maybe that was her way of closing the chapter. I was wrong. It was a Sunday morning when the chaos returned. I had just finished a run, sweat still clinging to my shirt, when my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "So this is your new life, huh? I saw you with her. She's not even pretty." I froze. My heart pounded. Not because I cared what Emily thought, but because I knew what it meant. She was watching me. The her Emily was talking about was Clara, a woman I had been quietly seeing for a couple of months. Clara was nothing like Emily. Where Emily was demanding, Clara was gentle. Where Emily always needed attention, Clara was secure. She didn't know the whole story yet, but she knew enough to be cautious about my past. And now Emily was trying to drag her into the storm. I replied with a single message. "Stay away from us, Emily. This is your last warning." Minutes later, another message came through. "She'll never love you like I did. She'll see what a failure you are." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was war. But unlike before, I wasn't scared. Because this time I was ready. I spent the next week preparing. Not emotionally, but strategically. Every interaction, every message, every unwanted appearance. I logged it all. I spoke with a lawyer. I updated the restraining order. I even installed security cameras around my apartment just in case. And then Emily made the mistake that sealed her fate. One evening, Clara and I came back from dinner to find Emily waiting outside the building. She was sitting on the steps, her hair wild, her eyes red. The moment she saw us, she shot to her feet. "So this is her?" she spat. "This is who you replaced me with?" Clara tightened her grip on my hand, her body stiff with nerves. I stayed calm. "Emily, you need to leave. Right now." But Emily wasn't listening. She stepped closer, pointing a shaking finger at Clara. "Do you even know what he's like? Do you know how boring, how pathetic he is? He'll ruin your life just like he ruined mine." Clara squeezed my hand, but she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. I could feel her trust in me, solid and unshaken. And that's when Emily crossed the line. She lunged forward, trying to shove Clara, but before I could react, the building's security guard was already there, pulling her back. "Ma'am, you need to leave, or we're calling the police." Emily fought against him, screaming, but within minutes the police were there. They arrested her on the spot for violating the restraining order. And here's where my patience, my silence, all paid off. Because when the case went to court, it wasn't just my word against hers. I had everything: the texts, the voicemails, the photos, the video footage from my cameras, even witness statements from neighbors who had seen her waiting outside my apartment for hours. The judge didn't just issue another restraining order. He gave her probation, mandatory counseling, and a hefty fine. But the real blow? Her reputation, what little remained of it, was destroyed. The story spread quickly. Friends who had clung to her lies now saw the truth. Her family, already embarrassed, cut ties completely. Even her job, one of the few things she had left, let her go after too many personal incidents disrupted her work. For the first time since she had left me, Emily had nothing. And me? I stood there in that courtroom, Clara's hand in mine, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed. Not because Emily had been punished, but because I had finally won, not by screaming, not by fighting, but by staying calm, smart, and unshakable. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was simple. I let Emily destroy herself. Weeks later, Clara and I moved forward. Slowly, carefully, but freely. One evening, as we unpacked boxes in our new place together, Clara looked at me and smiled. "You know," she said softly, "the way you handled all of this, it shows what kind of man you are. Most people would have lost their minds, but you didn't. You stayed strong." For the first time in years, I smiled. Not the bitter, tired smile I'd worn for so long, but a genuine one, because she was right. Emily had once called me boring, predictable. But in the end, it wasn't the wild, reckless choices that built a better life. It was patience, strength, quiet determination. And watching her face crumble in that courtroom, realizing she had lost everything while I stood there, free and smiling, that was the moment I finally understood. Revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is peace.